My kids abandoned me for their mom's rich new husband, now they want me back after he sold his company. 8 years ago, when I was 56, I discovered that my wife, June, who was 52 at the time, had been cheating on me with an old college friend of hers. Their affair had been going on for nearly a year before I finally caught them. The moment I found out, I packed my things, moved out of our home, and wasted no time filing for divorce. To be honest, our marriage had already been on the rocks for a while. June was constantly unhappy, mainly because she didn't think my job as a high school baseball coach brought in enough money. No matter how hard I worked, she always found something to complain about. We argued often, so much so that when it came down to ending things, the decision wasn't all that difficult for me. By then, both of our kids had already moved out, so there wasn't much tying me to that house anymore. Unfortunately, the divorce ended up costing me more than just my marriage, it cost me my relationship with my children as well. For reasons I couldn't understand, they immediately took their mother's side. At first, they tried to convince me to go easy on her, saying she had been a stay-at-home mom for so long that she must have felt trapped in a dull, repetitive life. They claimed that our constant fighting, combined with the loneliness she felt after they moved out, had pushed her into the affair. And while I could acknowledge that things weren't perfect between us, I couldn't wrap my head around why they expected me to forgive her. After all, I had been going through the same struggle she had, yet I never once considered betraying her like that. In fact, after every argument, I made an effort to make amends, to do something special for her, to remind her that I cared. But none of that seemed to matter to her in the end. I resented the fact that my own children wanted me to give June another chance, and when I refused, we ended up fighting over it. That led to them cutting me out of their lives completely for a while. Things only got worse when, just 2 months after our divorce was finalized, June married the same man she had been cheating with. That was a tough pill to swallow, and since I still wasn't on speaking terms with my kids at the time, I felt lonelier than ever. Eventually, I tried reaching out to them, and while they said they forgave me, it was clear they didn't really mean it. For the next several years, they kept me at arm's length. I wasn't invited to any of their major milestones, and to be honest, I barely had a relationship with them at all until earlier this year. And the only reason it seems to have changed is because of how well I'm doing financially now. For a long time, I was stuck working as a high school coach, overworked, underpaid, and barely scraping by. A friend of mine who worked at another school was in the same boat, and as we started discussing retirement plans, we came up with the idea of opening our own training facility. Coaching was what we knew best, so why not turn it into a business? We brought in another friend who had a good head for business, and together, we got things off the ground. At the time, we didn't expect it to amount to much, just something to help us stay afloat in our later years. But as it turns out, it took off in ways we never imagined. Our facility has grown in popularity, and now, we're even thinking about expanding. I can only assume that word got back to my kids about my success because, out of nowhere, they reached out to me earlier this year, acting like they wanted to reconnect. At first, I was thrilled. I thought maybe they had finally come around, realized I was just as much their parent as their mother was, and genuinely wanted me back in their lives. It never even crossed my mind that they might have other motives. But then, a few days ago, my 2 kids Reuben and his younger sister, Hannah, came to visit. They're both married now. Reuben tied the knot 6 years ago, and Hannah followed 4 years later. I wasn't invited to either wedding. They claimed it was because June and her husband would be there, and they didn't want to create an awkward situation. I was devastated, but they brushed it off, saying the guest list was already full and promising to make it up to me later. Of course, that never happened. Still, like an idiot, I held on to the hope that one day they'd realize I mattered just as much as their mother did. So when they showed up recently, I thought maybe that moment had finally come. But instead of a heartfelt reunion, they started talking about how they'd heard my business was doing well. Then, they mentioned how they wanted me to spend more time with my grandkids and maybe help them out financially, too. That's when it finally clicked. It took everything in me to keep my temper in check, but I simply told them I'd think about it. That seemed to satisfy them, and they left. But the moment they walked out my door, I blocked them everywhere. I wasn't going to be used for my money. Reuben has 2 kids, his oldest is 5, and the youngest is just a year old. Hannah had a baby girl 6 months ago. And you know what? I haven't met a single one of them. Not once. For years, I've been trying to be a part of my grandkids' lives. When Reuben's son was born, I asked him to bring the kid over, or at least invite me over to meet him. He always had an excuse. When Hannah had her daughter, I tried again, but once more, I got the same response: June and her husband will be there, and we don't want things to be awkward. Every time, I was the one expected to understand, to step aside and let it go. And every time, it hurt. But now that they need something from me, Suddenly, they want me to play the role of grandpa. I had no idea what was really going on with them financially until now, which is why I hadn't completely cut them out of my life before. But looking back, it all makes sense. I don't keep up with family gossip, and I'm not particularly close to most of my extended relatives. But after my kids showed up out of the blue, being all friendly after ignoring me for years, I knew something wasn't right. After I blocked my kids, I couldn't shake off the curiosity, so I started asking around to see what they had been up to all these years. That's when I learned that they had been struggling financially for quite some time. On top of that, things weren't exactly smooth between them and their stepdad anymore. That part really surprised me. From all the pictures they had posted over the years, it looked like they were one big happy family after June remarried. But apparently, things had started going south because their stepdad was planning to sell his company. He ran a furniture business, and after June married him, my kids both started working there. Now, I can't say for sure, but looking back, I have a strong feeling that their loyalty during the divorce wasn't just about taking their mother's side, it was about securing their own futures. If they convinced me to go easy on June and kept things civil, they might have thought it would guarantee them a place in their stepdad's company. In other words, they sold me out for stability, and I never even saw it coming. But now, that stability is crumbling. The company hasn't been doing well for a couple of years, and June's husband wants to sell it. Since he owns the business, he stands to gain the most from the sale, and honestly, he's lucky to have even found a buyer. My kids, on the other hand, aren't happy about it. Even though they'll get a share of the proceeds as upper management and shareholders, they're still going to lose their jobs. They don't want a one-time payout, they want long-term security. Apparently, the whole thing has turned into a family-wide drama because June, being the loudmouth she is, has been venting to anyone who will listen. At this point, it's no secret that they're all at odds with each other. And I'm guessing that's exactly why Ruben and Hannah suddenly decided to come knocking on my door. It's also no secret that my business is thriving, we've been running ads, and word of mouth has been working in our favor. So once I put all the pieces together from what my relatives told me, I made my decision. I was keeping my kids blocked. For 8 years, they didn't care about me or what was going on in my life. And now, the only reason they're reaching out is because they need something. It's insulting. And honestly, I feel like an idiot for spending so much time hoping they'd eventually come to their senses and apologize. But just a couple of days after I blocked them, they showed up at my house again, this time, demanding that I let them in. I told them straight up that I wasn't interested in talking. I also let them know that I had heard all about their situation with their stepdad and that it was clear to me that they were only here now because they wanted my financial help. I even called them out on why they left me in the first place, because their stepdad could offer them stable jobs and cushy management positions, something I couldn't. I told them they had sold me out. That must have hit a nerve because, in response, they flipped it around on me. They accused me of being cold, resentful, and unwilling to move forward. They insisted that I had it all wrong, that they weren't here for money, but because they finally realized I was still their father and they couldn't keep putting June ahead of me. They claimed that the only reason they even brought up financial help was for the sake of their kids, not because I was doing well for myself. And to top it off, they said it was disgusting that I'd even come to such a conclusion just because of some gossip from our extended family. That conversation has been eating at me ever since. It upset me so much that I had to take time off work just to clear my head. Logically, I know my relatives wouldn't lie to me. They have nothing to gain from it. If anything, they've always had my back, especially after the divorce. They've looked out for me, and I appreciate that. So I don't think they were spreading gossip, they were just answering my questions when I started looking into things. But even though I feel like I know the truth, I still can't help but wonder, should I give my kids a chance to fix things with me? Should I help them out financially, even if it's just a little? The truth is, I am doing well enough that I could support them if I wanted to. And I doubt they're asking for long-term assistance. Once the company sells, they'll probably find new jobs. Maybe all they really need is a temporary safety net, something to hold them over for the sake of their kids. I haven't even asked them for specifics, whether they're looking for an investment, a loan, or just plain financial help. But regardless, money is clearly part of this. And the more I think about it, the more I worry that I'm letting my pride get in the way. What if this is my only chance to reconnect with my children? What if shutting them out now means I'll never get to build a real relationship with my grandkids? I don't know what to believe anymore. The way they spoke the last time they visited threw me for a loop, and now, I'm second-guessing everything. I keep wondering if I'm making the biggest mistake of my life by keeping them out. And what if they're right? What if I really am being too bitter and unforgiving? If I let my pride take over, will I ever get another shot at fixing things with my family? The only thing holding me back right now is the nagging fear that I'm being used. I can't shake it. And I don't want to be used. But at the same time, I don't know what to think anymore. I feel lost. And the worst part? I don't have anyone I can freely talk to about this. So, here I am, trying to figure it out on my own, like I always have. Please understand, I'm just an old man trying to make sense of life after spending years on my own since the divorce. And as much as I hate to admit it, I miss my kids. I miss them more than I care to say. I want them in my life. I really do. But is this the right way? Am I making the right choice? So tell me, am I wrong for not wanting to get financially involved with them? Update 1. Thank you for the comments. I guess I needed the wake-up call more than I realized. Because honestly, out of pure desperation, I actually started considering reaching out to my kids again. But deep down, I know what's happening here. I know I'm being used. And I can't let myself be a doormat for them anymore. That's exactly what I've been all these years. Whenever they spoke to me, which was rare, it was always on their terms. And even then, it felt like they were doing me a favor by acknowledging my existence. They always made it clear that they preferred June and her husband. And now, I finally understand why. Because their stepdad gave them security. Because they chose him. And now that I know they willingly sold me out for cushy jobs, I don't think there's any coming back from that. I even talked to my buddies at work about it. They already knew the history, but when I told them what I had recently found out, they were appalled. At first, they believed my kids had been manipulated by June. They thought that maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for reconciliation. But after hearing everything, their stance changed. They told me to keep my kids blocked, for my own self-respect, for my own sanity. Because if I don't, I'm opening the door for them to drain me financially. Maybe it would start small. Maybe it would snowball. But one way or another, I'd be left with nothing but regret. And let's be real, I don't even know what kind of money they wanted from me. Maybe it was a little. Maybe it was a lot. Either way, I don't owe them anything. Even if they were telling the truth when they said it was for their kids and not for themselves, I still don't owe them anything. They never let me be part of their lives. They never brought my grandkids over to meet me. They never even allowed me to visit them. So why would I suddenly feel connected to kids I've never even met? I know that might sound harsh. But it's the truth. I can't go through life feeling guilty over children I've never seen. I won't start handing out money just because they share my blood. That's not how family works. That's not how this works. And if that makes me insensitive or resentful in their eyes, then so be it. I don't care anymore. I don't owe them an explanation. I don't need to justify myself. So, I've made my decision, I'm keeping my distance. Yes, it will hurt. But nothing can hurt more than the past 8 years already have. And if I could survive that, I can survive this too. At least this time, I am the one walking away. I am the one in control. And that makes all the difference. Thank you for listening. I really needed to vent. If anything else happens, I'll keep you posted. Update 2. It's been 2 weeks since my last update. And yesterday? Ruben and Miriam showed up at my workplace, kids in tow, demanding to see me. I was in the middle of a training session with a few students. Normally, I never take meetings during that time. That's the rule. If you want to see me, you wait. But apparently, Ruben and Miriam thought they were the exception. They refused to wait. The receptionist came to inform me about the situation and let me know that they were insisting on seeing me immediately. And at that moment, I felt nothing but annoyance. Who do they think they are? So, I told security to escort them to my office and have them wait there. I wasn't about to let them cause a scene in the lobby. Then, I took my sweet time finishing up my training session. I made them wait for half an hour before heading to my office. Yeah, it was petty. But they needed to learn a lesson. Just because they suddenly want a relationship with me doesn't mean they get to show up unannounced, disrupt my work, and demand my time like I owe them something. When I finally walked in, it was obvious that Ruben and Miriam were pissed. My grandkids, on the other hand, just looked bored and fussy. And the first thing out of my kids' mouths? Not an apology. Not a "Hey, Dad, how have you been?" Nope. They lectured me. They actually had the audacity to scold me about the importance of time. They told me, the father they abandoned, that it was rude of me to make them wait. That I had done it out of spite. That it was especially cruel considering they had brought my grandkids. Their entitlement was infuriating. I looked them straight in the eye and told them exactly what they needed to hear. I treated them the same way I would treat anyone else who showed up unannounced during a training session. If others could wait for me to finish my job, so could they. The fact that they expected special treatment just because they were my kids? That was downright ridiculous. Especially considering the way they treated me all these years. They had never shown me an ounce of respect, not as a father, not as a person, yet now, they wanted privileges? And bringing their kids along? That was their decision, not mine. They knew where they were coming. This was a training facility. I had a job here. And if they couldn't handle the reality that I wasn't going to drop everything for them, they were free to leave. I didn't force them to wait. That was on them. I could see they weren't happy with how blunt I was, but I guess they needed something from me, so they swallowed their pride and changed the subject fast. That's when they hit me with their new angle. They claimed they had brought their kids along so I could finally meet them, so I could bond with them and start feeling like a grandpa for the first time. And God, that hurt. But I had to shut it down. I told them I was heading home. My work was done for the day, and all I wanted was to go home and relax. And honestly, I knew exactly what they were doing. They thought bringing their kids would soften me up. They thought using their own children as bait would make me forget everything. And I wasn't going to fall for it. I told them straight up it was spineless to use their children as pawns just to gain access to me. It was manipulative. It was unethical. Of course, they immediately started defending themselves, swearing up and down that wasn't what they were trying to do. They just wanted me to meet my grandkids. But it was so blatantly obvious that this wasn't coming from a place of love. This wasn't about reconciliation. This was about money. And that's why they were so desperate to make me give them another chance. I saw right through it. No matter how much they insisted otherwise, I stood firm. I told them it was too little, too late. And here's the worst part, I did love my grandkids the moment I saw them. They were adorable. And if things had been different, I would have been thrilled to be part of their lives. But their parents made sure that never happened. And that's on them. After realizing I wasn't going to budge, they switched tactics again. They started begging me to just hear them out, just listen to their plan, just give them a chance to explain why they needed my money. I shut it down immediately. I told them I wasn't interested. That's when Ruben lost his temper. He snapped. He started yelling at me, practically spitting venom. And just like that, the kids started crying, scared, confused, overwhelmed by the shouting. And what was I doing? Trying to comfort them, while their parents were too caught up in their own selfishness to care. I was furious. So I gave them one final warning. I told them, very clearly, that if they didn't leave immediately, I would have security throw them out. I was done with them. I meant business, and I guess they finally realized that. They left, but not before throwing one last insult my way, telling me I was heartless, that my ego was going to be my downfall. I didn't care. I just wanted to go home. So I did. It's been 24 hours since that mess, and I still haven't unblocked them. And I don't plan to. Not after that. I'm done. Update 3. It's been 3 days. I haven't unblocked them. But that hasn't stopped them from trying to reach me. Earlier today, they sent me an email from a new address. They finally apologized. They said they hadn't expected things to spiral the way they did, but now, after reflecting on it, they understood why I was upset. At first, they had been angry, furious that I was acting like this when they were just trying to make things right. But now, they admitted that they kind of deserved it. They confirmed everything I already knew. None of it had been just baseless gossip, it was all true. And yeah, they had been offended when I called them out for choosing their stepdad over me for financial security. They hadn't expected me to say it outright. It had blindsided them. But in the end, they couldn't deny it. It was the truth. They had been looking out for themselves, and in doing so, they had become selfish. And now, they finally realized that I had deserved better. At this point, they admitted that I was fully entitled to shut them out. But they had one last request. Don't punish the kids. They begged me not to cut off my grandkids, even if I wanted nothing to do with them. And then, of course, they got to the real reason behind their email. They wanted to tell me their plan. The plan they had been so desperate for me to hear. The plan that required my money. Because they weren't just asking for a loan. They wanted me to invest in their business. They explained in their email that they were starting a business together. They couldn't stop their stepdad from selling his company, that was his decision as the primary owner. But now, they were branching out on their own, and they didn't want to jeopardize their own finances. So they had been looking for investors. And, of course, their first thought had been me. Apparently, things weren't going too well between them and their stepdad, and they figured I might be willing to step in. But after a lot of thinking, they admitted something else. Even in this situation, they had still been selfish. They had reached out to me as a potential investor, not because they were truly sorry for everything they had done in the past. And that realization hit them hard. So this time, they were writing to say something different. They just wanted to apologize. And, for the first time, they weren't asking me for anything. They told me that if I ever wanted to meet my grandkids, I could call them anytime. No conditions, no strings attached, they would show up. And as for the business? That was entirely my decision. They didn't expect me to invest anymore. After reading that email, I didn't know what to think. It seemed genuine. But I've been taken for a fool before. And I refuse to let that happen again. At the same time, I do want to build a relationship with my grandkids. They had no part in any of this, and I didn't want to lose out on what little time I had left to spend with them. So I decided to take a step back. For the next few days, maybe weeks, I wouldn't be making any decisions. I just needed a break. Update 4. I thought long and hard about it. And now, almost 2 months after their last message, I finally made my decision. I'm going to try. Not with my kids, at least, not right away. That's going to take a long time. But with my grandkids? That's a different story. I'm already 58. I'm not getting any younger. And I don't want to waste whatever time I have left. They've already grown up so much without ever knowing their real grandpa. So, a few days ago, I finally wrote back. I told them I would be happy to have them over for dinner this weekend, spouses, grandkids, everyone. But I also made something very clear. I would not be investing in their business. If they were expecting me to help them financially at any point, they could forget about it. And if that meant they no longer wanted to visit me, that was fine, too. I wasn't going to let them cross my boundaries again. My tone in that last part had been pretty firm, so I wasn't expecting an immediate response. But to my surprise, they replied the same day. They told me they didn't expect me to invest. They didn't deserve it. But they did want me to build a relationship with my grandkids. And they were happy to accept my dinner invitation. A new beginning. They came over yesterday. And honestly, it went better than I expected. Their spouses are good people, kind, respectful. And, at one point, they all apologized for everything. They told me they were looking forward to starting over. And you know what? I am, too. Because as much as I've tried to convince myself that I don't need anyone, the truth is, it gets lonely. And soon enough, I'll be retiring. Maybe now is as good a time as any to fix things. Maybe this is the opportunity I've been waiting for. I'm glad my kids finally reached out and did the right thing. And I really hope that things only get better from here.